Godzilla looks like your mother. Also, Keiko is the best character in the show. Welcome back, everybody. Today we are talking about the newest installment in shows set in the Monsterverse, in that of Monarch 2023, directed by Matt Shackman, which follows the story of two half-siblings in search of their father after the events of Godzilla 2014, which then becomes a generational story about the rise, fall, rise again of Monarch and the Titans in the Monsterverse. Wow, was this a good show. And as a longtime Godzilla fan, I think this show does exactly what it set out to do. It fills the gaps in between what's occurring between each of the Monsterverse movies, what's happening on the smaller end of things, and it does it really well. Now, that's not to say that the show isn't without its problems, of course. My biggest criticism for this show was done on purpose. It's like the show wanted me to dislike this aspect of the show, and because of that, I don't even know if it really counts as a criticism. Still, I'm going to count it, and that is the characterization of Hiroshi and Kate. And I loved Keiko as a character. I thought she was phenomenal. I loved what she brought to this show and to this franchise, but holy shit, is her family lineage trash. They all fucking suck. They have so many issues as a family. This show does a fantastic job at making me despise Hiroshi because of what he did to his kids in two separate families, because he's a shitty guy. That fool prioritized his work over his two families, bro. Oh my god, you gotta get him out of here. Motherfucker needs to reevaluate himself, what he believes in, because fuck that guy for everything he did to his families. And to a certain degree, so does Kate. For you see, the first half of the show presents Kate as being someone who's very, very negative, almost too negative, and hateful towards her dad, and that's cool and all, until you realize she ain't an angel herself. Then you realize that the reason she is so mad and so negative towards her dad and her reaction to things is because she's letting out her own insecurities. And oh gosh, and during the back half of the series, you realize she also cheated on her spouse and things like that. And it gets better, don't get me wrong, but they never resolve that aspect of her story, which kind of pissed me off, and I'm hoping season 2 of Monarch does a better job. Also, holy shit, I could not get over that one episode, which is a love story between Mei and Kentaro. Let's never revisit that. And besides that, those criticisms are relatively minor issues in the grand scheme of things, because this show is nothing short of primetime TV. It reminded me of Andor in the way that the story is told over different points in history and different points in different locations, but it does such a good job at flowing all of it together. And if anything, it's even harder for this because this is taking place simultaneously in the past and then the present, and eventually fluctuates in different times within that gap. But somehow it still manages to make a self-contained story without ever confusing the viewer. And this works to the drama of the show, which was perfect. You see, Monarch in movies is viewed as this kind of big government-like faction, this big player in a lot of things, and tends to be the savior, right? They help Godzilla, they help defeat the evil monster, things like that. But this show shines another light to Monarch. One filled with a lack of purpose, a loss of vision, and corruption, a whole lot of corruption, which is exactly what the show needed. Monarch is not a perfect organization. It never should have been, it never will be. But like any huge organization, you're gonna have your good people, you're gonna have your bad people. That's just the way it is. And this show does a good job at showing both. For every Serizawa you have in Monarch, you have a Hiroshi. And this is an interesting juxtaposition where you have the final scene which shows our now good guys working for the evil company known as Apex. Because as we know, Apex created this, which is not a good thing in the movies. And of course, this also perfectly sets up a conflict for season 2 and the internal conflicts which may occur in Apex with Kate and everybody else in the gang. And speaking of Kate, this cast was superb. Kurt Russell, Wyatt Russell, and Mari Yamamoto really held this show up. And also made me realize something else. Kate was never the main character. She's on every poster. She's obviously our protagonist. She's not the main character of this particular story, but rather Shaw, aka Wyatt, and Kurt Russell was. Kate really only served as a POV to introduce us to the story and understand the events of this world. But by the end you realize that Shaw and his journey to find Keiko is really what the heart of this story is. The back and forth between Kurt and Wyatt Russell was phenomenal, and the dynamic they had with Keiko and Billy was fantastic. Keiko is such a complex character in a very nuanced way, and I'm really glad that this showed characters like her because of the time period. She faced a lot of discrimination, a lot of racism, and she never let those forces of humanity bring her down. She was a powerful unit on her own, and I'm so glad that in the context of the show she was able to rise above all those things trying to push her against the wall. But obviously in the context of the show, it's a shame that she lost a lot of time. The reunion between her and Shaw was nice, but it was incredibly bittersweet. And when he saw Hiroshi, I felt so much sorrow for the characters because we know what they've both been through. Obviously Hiroshi's not a good guy, not at all, but we know that he was suffering after he lost his mother. And obviously Keiko also probably feels like a failure because she couldn't raise her own son. She left for like all those years, and now she's come back and her son is older than she is. And you see those two, that pain that those two carry with them, and it's such a sad scene when you see them together, because obviously they're so happy to see one another, but they know that inside they're both hurting. And even the supporting cast was great in this. While I might not agree with every character motivation in this, they felt real, and they felt very genuine. Like Verdugo, Tim, Kentaro, and Miko, and the whole gang. I'm really excited for the campier tone of the Monsterverse franchise and where it's going. It's a very Showa era style of Godzilla and King Kong movies that we're going in, and I'm here for it. But at the same time, I also like the darker tones, your Godzilla -1s, things like that. But obviously that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people only like the campier stuff, some people only like the serious stuff, and because of that, not everybody's gonna like the direction of this world and this show. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that Godzilla 2014 was the darkest Godzilla movie or just darkest movie in this franchise, because it really wasn't. It was not all that, but a lot of people seem to enjoy the more serious tone. And this show excels in bridging the gap by having a more dramatic feeling while still having happier moments in there. And like I said, it leaves me excited for the future of the show and the future of the Monsterverse. I do wish, as much as Nostalgia Bait sucks, I wish there was some kind of cameo. I really wanted Serizawa to show up in this, especially after his really, really cool death in King of the Monsters, but sadly he didn't. Maybe next time, maybe season 2, who knows? Better yet, they could have even included Tom Hiddleston or Brie Larson. I mean, to be fair, I don't know if they could afford them. It's Apple. They can afford them. They should have brought them in. We never saw them after Kong Skull Island. There's so much untapped potential there. But overall, Monarch Legacy of Monsters is as good as the Monsterverse gets. It's up there with Kong Skull Island as one of my favorite Monsterverse entries, and it's so good at almost everything it does. Keyword is almost everything. Not quite everything, but still. I can't wait to see more of this show and more of these characters, and hopefully they show up in a Godzilla movie in the future, or some kind of Monsterverse movie in the future. It'd be cool to have these characters cameo, just show up in the background, let them walk across the screen or something. I don't know. And who knows, maybe in the sequel Apex will be the good guys and Monarch will be the bad guys. Probably not, but a boy can dream, am I right? Yeah. And as per usual, thank you, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch me talk about how good of a character Keiko is. I do truly believe that. So until next time, see you, Space Cowboys.